The question has been asked of me recently. What word do I call what I do, right? Am I calling myself a sculptor or what have you? And generally, to call myself a sculptor would seem pretentious or something, right? It'd be enough just to say that I'm an artistic stonemason, right? A lot of my work can be classified as sculpture, sure, and some of it as mosaic or what have you, or land art. There's, but overall, do we need a title? Do we need a category or whatever? And no, but I would just say stonemason would be a broad enough term, and artistic stonemason if you want, It might be accurate to say visionary stonemason. That somehow seems, that kind of feels even more pretentious than to say sculptor. Now, land artist on occasion, right? But with these ice pieces, right? I'm feeling more like a land artist than ever with these pieces of ice that I've been doing. With both the ephemerality, the temporary nature of them, and also the part of the ephemerality being the point that there's all of this work, maybe days of work, just to get one quick photo, because things are going to melt, conditions are going to change, the lighting needs to be just right, working for days. And this is something I've noticed both with the Goldsworthy and with plenty of other land artists, that they have this sense of working and working and working just to get one moment. And if you're lucky, maybe you capture as much of that moment as can be captured, on film or what have you, and you can share it with the world. Anyway, I've noticed a bit of that with some of these pieces. And the change and the serendipity and whatnot. Like, look at this one, I was working on this piece and I said, hey, I don't want to use any dye. I've got natural pigments. I've got, I was using, my reds were, beet powder, right? And I've got all sorts of pigments that can be used, mineral pigments and, natural, eco-friendly, store-bought food dye, whatnot, but let me do one of them just white for a change. And I did this one white. And I'm like, I started doing this one white. And then, I changed the design completely to have these tentacles built into it, And I said, what, it needs color. So I added all this color. And then it got warm and the color mostly drained out of it. And now I'm like, I like this thing white. Maybe not from this angle, maybe not in this light. And sure, you can see a bit of the green, but I like it being white. And that made me do this. Didn't make me, but later on I was like, what about a white one with red? So we got just white snow. And red, beet powder. And of course I've got that tentacle. I don't know if you can see this tentacle with the eye on it, One piece that didn't involve any color started melting, kind of leaning more than it originally was. So that piece is done. Anyway.